Well, let's get a word now with the victim of oil theft, Peter Hunt, from a company called WasteCare. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
And your staff were due to collect used cooking oil from supermarkets like Morrison's, Asda and Tesco. And I know that two men, Stuart Bradley and Matthew Walker from Worcestershire, were taking it instead. In all, they were convicted of stealing 220,000 litres of cooking oil from takeaways and supermarkets in the Midlands and the North West. When did you first become aware they were stealing from you?
Well, they were stealing effectively from our customers. So the difficulty we had was when our drivers were arriving at a customer to make a collection, they found the containers missing, or they said, well, you were only here yesterday, what are you doing here again? And this happened gradually over a period of time, and because we did deal with thousands of sites across the country, it was very difficult to actually try and apprehend these people.
And how were they getting away with it?
Well, what was incredible was that we put in more and more security, and we found that, for example, they'd painted a van in the same colours as ours, put a company name very similar to ours, WasteCare rather than WasteCare, wearing uniforms, using paperwork very similar to ours. So for the customer's point of view, they thought they were dealing with us.
Yeah, so the supermarkets and the restaurants and so on thought they were dealing with your company because it was called WasteCare instead of your name, WasteCare, and all of their logos, all of their identifying branding material made it look as though they were working for you.
They even went to the effort of ringing the customer up beforehand, saying, the usual chaps can't come today, we're coming instead, we'll see you in 10 minutes, or whatever. Turned up, took it away. So they were certainly well organised, and it took a lot of effort by us and other victims, as well as the police, to bring this together and eventually get a successful arrest and conviction.
I mentioned that they were ultimately convicted of stealing 220,000 litres of cooking oil. How much did you lose?
Well, a large part of that, but I think that's the tip of the iceberg. The only reason we know that volume is they left the paperwork in the vehicle, which the police were able to get access to. If they hadn't have had that, we would have been guessing very much how much they've stolen. But they are not the only ones out there, I'm afraid. So it's certainly on the increase. And
do you think that the authorities are doing enough to deal with the issue?
I think it's very difficult. I think at first it seems like a victimless crime, but the cost not only to the exchequer, in, as you mentioned before, millions of pounds, but it's also affecting our industry as a whole, the legitimate side of biofuel manufacture, but it's putting users of this material, fuel, at risk because it nullifies warranties, it can damage engines, it can cause a great deal of problems to users. So if it's
converted in an inexpert way, it can cause damage to a motorist's engine and potentially, I suppose, cause risk to the people who are converting it and storing it if they don't know what they're doing.
Well, it's a bit like bootleg liquor. If you don't know where it's come from, you don't know what's in it, you don't know who's produced it, you're at risk. And
are you and your customers still being targeted by these thieves?
Yes, it's continued. We have seen a small drop since the arrests, since the convictions last December, but it is a small drop. I would say it had increased to hundreds a month across the industry of incidents, and I think it's still in the hundreds, but perhaps 20% down on what it was at the peak last year.
Can you put a figure on how much your company's lost as a result of this?
We're not the largest, but I would say that it's in the order of 1 million or so a year, that sort of figure.
Wow. Some people are comparing it, saying it's the new metal theft. Do you think that's an apt comparison?
Well, if you think that it's the material is worth effectively twice the value of scrap steel, then it's on the same sort of scale. It just doesn't quite have the headlines because they're not digging up railway lines and taking them or cabling. But it is a genuine problem for the country and society as a whole, I think.
And Peter Hunt from WasteCare, thanks for being with us. Emma, you've said that cooking oil can be converted to biodiesel through a pretty simple chemical process, but that's only part of it, isn't it? Because once the crooks have made it, how do they then pass it on to the motorist?
Well, the crooks who are stealing it are either selling it on to unsuspecting legitimate processing plants for conversion into biodiesel, or it's being converted into the fuel by the criminals themselves and then sold on to the black market.
And given the scale of theft that Peter Hunt is referring to there, there. Presumably they're doing it because there is big money to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if someone's stealing used cooking oil, they're getting the raw material for free at the expense of legitimate businesses like Peter Hunt's. And if they sell it on the black market, they avoid paying the duty on it. And that's around 80 pence per litre that the Treasury is missing out on. According to some estimates, that's costing the Treasury £25 million a year.